When you're creating your queries in Microsoft Access using the query wizard, there may be times when you feel somewhat limited by your options. So we're going to look at creating a query from scratch now. In the previous lesson, we used the query wizard to create a simple select query that goes into one or more tables, allows us to select the fields that we want to display, and here's the results right here from the previous lesson. You can see that we took some fields from two different tables and we display them in a data sheet. Now, what if we want to do things like filter out certain records and use criteria to show only the information we need? Here's a scenario. We're giving an 80s party, so we want to get a list of all the songs from our database that are 80s. So that's what we're going to do now, but we're going to create this query from scratch. This is the results from the previous lesson. You can see I'm using Music Library 6a from the exercise files. We'll continue to use this particular database. I just want to pop over to Design View for a second though. So I'm going to click the Design View button, and this is our songs query from the previous lesson. You can see we used two tables, and then we've got fields from each of those tables showing up down below. A simple select query. What you'll notice though is that there's no sorting going on. We have a sort option down here. There's no criteria set for any of these fields, and that's what we're going to do by creating our query from scratch. We're going to use some criteria, maybe even some sorting. So let's do that. We'll go up to the Create tab, and this time we'll skip past the Query Wizard right over to Query Design, and we'll give it a click. So right away we're starting our new query. Here's the Show Table dialog box that allows us to choose the tables we want to use in our query. Let's choose Songs. So I'm going to click Songs and Add, and we may also want the performer name, so I'm going to click Performers and add that one as well. Alright, now all we need to do is get the fields that we want to use down below into our design area. So I'm going to close this up. We're done selecting tables. And I'm going to take song title, that's definitely information I'm going to want, and drag it down into the field section down here and release. You can see that the field shows up, song title, and the table it comes from also shows up down below. Now if I click in the next column, you can see there's a drop down. If I click that, I'm going to see all of the fields in each of the tables showing up here as well. So that's another way to get a field into the right column. So I've already got song title. Let's go down to performers and choose their first name. And we also should have the performer's last name if there happens to be one. So another way to get that down there is just to double click last name. You can see it automatically fills in the next column. So this is the information I want displayed, but the field I want to set the criteria on is actually not showing yet. So I need to go back to my songs table here, and I'm just going to stretch it out so I can see all of the fields. And it's the decade that I want to use, so I'm going to double click decade. You can see it shows up down here. By default, all of these fields will be showing in the results. I really don't need the decade to show though. I want to choose all of the 80s music, but it doesn't have to say 80s all the way down the column. I know it's going to be 80s music, so I'm going to turn that off by clicking the checkbox. Now I'm going to set some criteria up. So right here in the criteria row under decade, I'm going to click in here and I'm going to start building my criteria. Now I could start typing here if I know what I'm doing. If I don't, I can get some help from the expression builder. So I'm going to come up here to the Builder button, give it a click. There's my expression builder. We saw this in a previous lesson. And now all I want to do is set up the criteria so that the decade field from the songs table equals 80s. So I can do that by coming down here to tables and double clicking. That expands it. We know that it comes from the songs table, so I'm going to double click songs. That shows up now over here on the right. Decade, I'm going to double click and look what happens here. It gets inserted into my expression builder. I can type in the equal sign now or select it from here. So the decade equals, and I'm going to type in 80, S, 80s. When I click OK, I will have written the actual criteria. Now the cursor's still flashing here. If I wanted to continue entering more criteria, I could. And I'm going to click down here, and you can see the full string that shows up. Sometimes this part will get hidden and just the 80s will show up, but that's the full criteria as set up by using the expression builder. So now I've got my criteria. I've got the fields that are going to be displayed in the results. All I have to do is run this. When I click run, you can see the results. So here's the song title. There's the first name and the last name. I know it's 80s because of my criteria, but if I want to be sure, of course I can go back to Design View anytime. I can click the Show checkbox here under Decade and run this again, and you can see, sure enough, it's all 80s down the right-hand side. All right, I'm just going to double-click here in between the columns to display all of the information in full width. And there's my results from a design query that I created from scratch. Now, of course, it's very important that we save our work. If we don't do that, then we won't be able to go back to this query whenever we need it. Because keep in mind, when we save our queries, as we update our songs tables and our albums and so on over time, and they start to grow, we'll add more 80s music, obviously. Well, next time we run the query, we'll see all of the new results. So let's go up to the Save button up here. We'll click Save. You can see the default name showing up is Query 1 for me. I'm going to type in 80s music, and I'll click OK. You can see it now shows up over here under the songs table as well as the performers table because we're using fields from both of these tables. And I'll always have access to the 80s music query just by double clicking it. I'll always see the latest results. And over time, like I said, as we start adding more music, the results will grow automatically. So that's creating your own query from scratch using the design mode. Of course, the query wizard is another way. Let's talk about how we go back and make changes to a query, and we'll do that in the next lesson.